Welcome to Pods of War, the podcast from the University of Wolverhampton War Studies Department. I'm Spencer Jones, and I'm joined as always by my friends and colleagues Howard Fuller and John Buckley. And John, you're the focus of today because I understand you've seen a film recently, and that film was Top Gun Maverick, and you've got some pretty strong opinions on it, I understand. But
there are two things really which kind of irritated me about it. The first was, and this is a constant beef I have. You've heard me going about this before. You know, that I got furious at the film Fury because of the way in which they portray and have people playing parts which they couldn't possibly have done because they're way too old. Now, Tom Cruise might not look 59. He doesn't look 59. He's very well preserved. He's a very fine specimen of male humanity. And it's quite he could quite easily get away with playing a character much younger than him. But the character has to be in their late 50s in order to match it with the fact that they were flying in the mid 80s, these kind of things. So let's assume he's in his early 20s then when they were doing all that kind of stuff. It makes him now 35, 36 years later, knocking 60. So he's actually playing somebody about the right kind of age. The problem with that is somebody who's knocking 60 cannot fly a fighter jet and pull the kind of G's and all kind of physical stresses and things that he does in the film. If he'd just been in a kind of a role in which he's telling others what to do, or directing things or something like that, yeah, fine, maybe there's something in that. However, he ends up flying F-18s and pulling ridiculous manoeuvres and doing amazing things and beating all these other pilots who are 35 years younger than him and showing them what to do. So I don't know. I just don't think it's very honest that they have somebody of that age doing those kind of things. It just doesn't happen. In the same way that Brad Pitt, at 51 at the time, Brad Pitt's the same age as me. I know it's unbelievable, but he is.
I know you look far younger than Brad Pitt.
Absolutely, yeah. But he was driving a tank in northwest Europe I think it's set in April 1945 in the film Fury. And the average age of that crew is about 38. Ludicrous and insulting because the guys who actually do the fighting are about 20 to 25, or younger, 18 to 25. That's the age group. But people don't want to see that. They don't want to see young people being killed in war films and things. But it's okay for big, hunky guys, from who are much older, much more identifiable. So this panders to that a little bit, which I found annoying. The other angle on it is the thing which is just, you despair, is the idea that Maverick, or Tom Cruise, whilst no one's looking, just goes and pinches an F-18, disobeying all his orders, all the chain of command. He just takes the F-18 and flies the kind of practice mission to prove that the way he says it could be done. And then said, oh, okay, Tom, sorry, Pete, you've done a great job there. You're going to lead the mission now. Come on. One, he's too old. Two, he wouldn't have got away with that. And he does it a couple of times in the film. This man is unsackable, where in reality, of course, he'd have been long gone. At the start of the film, he disobeys orders and blows up a huge project, fighter, cutting-edge aeroplane and things, which goes to Mach 10 or something, over the very, some kind of
goes to warp speed.
Thing. Yeah. I think it was Mach 10 anyway. And he pushes it too far and blows the thing up. And he survives. And then says, now we're going to send you back to Top Gun school to lead some training on this mission. I'm sorry, you just put a multi-billion-dollar project. It was about to be closed down anyway. And then a couple other things. The best bit, you go and see the film just for this bit. It's like out of a Commando book.
I love Commando.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching on that level, this works in a way because they never identify who the enemy is, and I don't think they do it in the original Top Gun film. They don't say who it is they're fighting. I think it's implied, but I don't think they do in the original. They don't in this. Then in this, it gives the impression that it's North Korea, but it is not explicitly stated. Anyway, so the Tom Cruise's mate gets shot down, saving Tom Cruise or doing something in the air action over North Korea. They're destroying some kind of secret establishment, usual kind of James Bond stuff. And he gets shot down. So Tom Cruise and this guy they both end up in North Korea behind enemy lines. What do? They
Spoilers.
Go to it's spoilers. Yeah, they go to the local air base where the enemy's air force is flying from, and whilst no one's looking, it's been bombed and hit by missiles and things. Whilst no one's looking, they sneak onto the base and find an F-14. Just happens to be one there that they're testing, and it's fueled up, ready to go, and they jump in this aeroplane and press a couple of buttons, and suddenly they're on the runway. And a bit like when Clint Eastwood nicks the Firefox, if you remember that.
Exactly, Firefox.
Everyone's looking round. Suddenly, this jet zooms off and so on. Similar kind of thing. Zips off into space, and then he takes down some latest generation fighters with an F-14, which is like, I don't know, a Fokker triplane
because
taking
of course
down a P-51.
He can fly the planes better than they can. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah, he's Top Gun,
of course. Yeah. So there were some elements like that where. I got to dig in the ribs from Judas. I sighed at that particular moment in the film, in between eating my munchies. At that point, it just stretched it a bit too far. So, there are just elements where it goes on too far.
To finish, I'm going to go to you, John, and say, so you didn't really like Top Gun Maverick, but can you tell the listeners, do you have any recommendations for great aerial combat films that you feel meet your standards?
Oh, I wouldn't say about standards, because it's always difficult to talk about those kind of things because they are trying to do something different. But I also thought the Battle of Britain captured an essence of the disconnect in the skies when you lose contact, you're in the clouds, you've no idea what's going on, and things are zipping about. And Memphis Belle, that really captures something of those kind of operations. But I mean, that's Second World War. Modern stuff I wouldn't know so much about. But yeah, I like that. I'd like either of those films for all their other flaws and faults. They capture that kind of element of it for me quite well.
Very good. And Howard, have you got any aerial combat films you'd recommend?
Well, I appreciate trying to show modern weaponry and the things that are going on right now that everyday people don't really know about, don't have access to, this kind of thing. I appreciate that. But I always have a soft spot for the more historical bits too, recreating aerial battles from decades ago, generations ago, or even 100 years ago. So I've always been a fan of like the Blue Max, at least the action sequences in the Blue Max originally. So there's a late 1960s film, and they've got biplanes and triplanes, and those are real planes, going through various action sequences, which certainly when I was younger, watching that kind of thing on a matinee, on TV or something, you're glued to it because these men are flying very dangerous looking things, and the planes are moving painfully slow, it seems, and circling each other and going in and out of clouds, and they're terrified, and they're getting shot down, or their planes are malfunctioning, they're crashing on takeoff, crashing on landing, and I really appreciated that kind of. We could use another really good First World War aerial combat film, for example. I think.
Yeah.
I think you could even make a case. There's been the First World War aerial combat films have generally been superior to the Second World War. Starting with Wings, even things melodramas like Dawn Patrol, yes, it's of its era, but it's got some great sequences in it. I've got a soft spot for Aces High with Malcolm McDowell.
Oh yes,
the 70s, which is basically it's Journey's End except with fighter pilots, and there's some great sequences. And that Blue Max, highly entertaining. So there's something to be said there. I do have to mention though, there was also that absolutely appalling aerial combat World War I film, Flyboys, which came out a few years ago. In which a gigantic death zeppelin was coming to destroy Paris with chemical weapons. It was awful. Don't watch it. I absolutely don't watch it. It's one of the worst films I've ever seen. But there we go. Perhaps we can discuss, go into greater depth about aerial combat films in a future podcast. Thank you very much, John, for sharing your thoughts on Top Gun, even if they weren't always positive. And thank you, the listeners, for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Thank you.